As I suspected, 32 flavors.
No, Daredevil is absolutely one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. Not just in comic books, not just in Marvel comics, but absolutely one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. So obviously there's a show coming out now called Daredevil Born Again, which, technically the comic storyline was loosely adapted for season 3. However, I'm going to recommend some comics to people to read. So whether you're someone who's hesitant and on the fence or waiting to see how people react to it by the time the show ends and then you dive in, I got the perfect holdover for you. Now, if you watch the show and you hate it and you want to see these stories done better, I got the solution for you. And if you're someone who loves this show, when it's all said and done, you're like, man, I want to read some Daredevil comics. I fucking got you too. So I decided to do a 5 Daredevil comics to read before or after for Daredevil Born Again. So I didn't do this based on my personal 5 favorite comic storylines, etc., etc. I did this based on what I felt and presumed would be the most fitting storylines tied to what's going on in this show. With 3 of them I feel are very tied, and then 2 are kind of more of like a really overlooked comics that people should be talking about and acknowledging more, that really add to the greatness of Daredevil's lore mythology. So with that all said and all further ado, let's get into our 5 Daredevil comics, starting with number 5!
Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
And so we have Daredevil Volume 5, number 595 through issue 600. The 6th issue are titled Mayor Fisk. So don't get confused with all the legacy numbering. If you want to get simple, you can look up these specific covers and you will find this story at shops, eBay, mycomicshop.com, yada 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 yada, or you can buy the simple trade paperback that collects all 6 of these issues together, titled Mayor Fisk. You can find it on Amazon if you're someone who really can't get out to a comic shop, or if you can be awesome and get to a comic shop and support it there, that would be all the more awesome and badass. Now that all said, this is the storyline right off the bat that we first notice when you watch the trailer. So this is during the Charles Soule run of the comic books, and this was half drawn by Stefano Landini, half drawn by Ron Garney. This was where the Kingpin Mayor Fisk is born. Wilson Fisk becomes the mayor of New York City. And in this run, you see how all the heroes are absolutely taken aback by the fact that Wilson Fisk got elected. And it is really game-changing. And in a time where they kept saying nothing will ever be the same with the Marvel Universe until ... the next event, and then it changes right back a few weeks later, in some cases even a few days later. This actually is something that stuck around in comic books for more than 5 minutes, which is how storylines should be. They should make you feel invested and have something stick for a bit and absolutely matter. And this storyline is great because it really shows you what happens when Wilson Fisk has the power of the legal system, well, on a legal level now, because he used to operate more from the shadows. He's always worked with government officials. He's been in cahoots with occasionally some crooked cops too. But this time, he's not operating behind the shadows. He's doing it right out there, a lot more clear out in the open. And this really sets the stage for his laws against all the street level New York City vigilante type of characters. And for those of you who saw the trailer, you remember that shot where they're showing all of Times Square, and there was like a big reaction to Wilson Fisk winning. Well, guess what? That was right in this storyline. That splash where you see Times Square, right in this storyline. So if you want to see a very pivotal moment in Kingpin's career, this is the storyline right here that they're clearly pulling from for this particular show. Absolutely read the living hell out of it.
Christmas spirit is more powerful than you could ever imagine. People need Christmas to remind themselves of how good they can be.
And then you have Daredevil number 253. This was from the Anno Senti run, drawn by the absolutely stellar John Romita Jr., coming in hot. Like, I mean, red hot of the oven. He was that fresh pizza at the New York City oven that you just took him clean out. You're like, whoo, you look good. And so it was. And he was off to the races with this run. Now, obviously, he did issues preceding this, but this particular issue stands out to me because it comes to something that attaches to me on a more personal level. It's Christmas. Anytime you get a Christmas level comic, I'm just like, bro, I gotta read you. And then when Daredevil's in the mix, oh man, I'm like Vince McMahon when he saw Trish Stratus on the chair. He's just like, whoa! That's where I was at with this comic. So it's great because this is a nice one-shot story that can be read in isolation. Yeah, sure, it adds to the continuity of everything that's come before, but what's really great is that it's Christmas themed, and you have the duality of two different lifestyles. You have a man who has it all, but yet he doesn't have anything. And then you have another guy who has little, yet has it all as well. And I'm talking about Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. And they don't even see each other in this entire issue. It is a great way to see the contrast between their lifestyles and their choices. And there's even a great lesson for kids and the rights and wrongs of doing things. It's great. It's a nice, great Christmas lesson. If you want to talk about messaging, there's a great positive message in this comic book for kids to learn from this. So yes, absolutely strong recommend for this single issue. Now, if you want to wait for that upcoming hardcover collection that's coming out, that's going to have a lot of the Anno Senti run Daredevil comics, you can do that. Or you can seek out at a comic shop that carries back issues in particular, or go seek out on eBay or mycomicshop.com. Don't be that guy who just buys it on digital. I mean, yeah, sure, buy and support on digital just so you can read it, but own that shit, man. Own Daredevil number 253. It is such a great comic book, and the fact that it still plays out the events of Born Again, which is the end of Frank Miller's run, is great as well. So it still tells its own story, while also being part of the larger narrative of actual continuity when storylines all mattered, whether they were good or bad. That's my number 4 pick. And of course, I'm going to say it like water being wet, snow being white. Buy it and read it. And here's number 3 right here. Daredevil Volume 5, yet again. I see a pattern here. Charles Soule run, heavily influenced this particular season of Daredevil, whether you want to call it Born Again, the first of its own kind that continues off from another show, or season 4. But you get the point here. This is obviously really heavily leaning on the Charles Soule run of comics. Not just having Mayor Fisk, not just taking splash pages and making it part of the actual show, but also even one of the villains that this run introduced, as I mentioned on this video. This was the character introduction of Muse, the debut of Vincent Van Gogh. Now, Muse was this guy who's he's one of those deranged artists who makes his acts of murder into forms of really fucked up art. It's really crazy. He is he gives me the chills with the shit that he does. He's a man who speaks poetically about the natures of his artistic evils, and our horned hero and his apprentice Blindspot are tested to their absolute limits in the story. And for every win, there's absolutely the most direst of consequences in this one. And this is dark, even for Daredevil, which is saying a lot because he's one fucking scary dude. He's basically almost eyeless. And the fact that for the show coming out, they actually have him comic accurate and faithful tells me, okay, someone actually looked at the material and said, we need him to look like this. Once again, these are the single issues right here. Volume 5, 10 through 14. Of course, you can buy the trade as well. For Volume 5, trade number 3. I can't remember what the trade is called because I was too busy owning the single copies of this particular issue. And once again, if you're watching this show and you're like, oh, where Muse come from? This is where it all started for Mr. Vincent Van Gogh himself. Of course, you should buy it.
That's it? You believe me?
I don't have to believe you. I know you aren't lying.
But how?
Let's just say you've got your superpowers, and I've got mine.
And then you have number 2. Holy crap, we're here already? Yeah, because I want to go over these comics a little bit. I want to give some details, but I don't want to give away everything because I actually want you to read these things. I hear that whole statement about no one reads anymore. I absolutely don't believe that, considering how well manga sells and how many kids still read Dogman and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. They are still selling by the millions, and that's not my opinion. That's a fact. Now, that all said, I want people to read Daredevil comics because this is truly one of the richest histories of comic books, especially in Marvel Comics. So when I pick number 2, I'm like, oh, I'm going to pick this one because this is a great issue, and it also does connect. Knowing what I've now seen in episode 3 of Born Again, it does connect. Not in terms of a story that was influenced by, but because there's a lot of loose elements that if you look past, the surface, you're like, oh, okay, I could see why he thought of that. So obviously I'm going to go with Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, issue number 100. Like, whoa, what? You just said Spider-Man, but that's not Daredevil. Well, hold on. Wait a minute, Jim, okay? Just wait, all right? This was by Peter David and Rich Buckler. And most remember this particular run when they were reading these comics in the, I think, 80s that this came out. This was a very pivotal issue in the whole The Death of Jean DeWolf story arc that are going on. However, this issue is essential for two other things in terms of Daredevil history. This is about the lines that vigilantes can and cannot cross and the accountability, or lack thereof in some cases, that comes with it. And there's a lot of challenging arguments going on between Spider-Man and Daredevil on this. Now, mind you, this is when Spider-Man was wearing the symbiote, so his natural instincts are going to be, well, a bit more on the aggressive side of things, especially when it comes to his side of the debate and the argument, especially when you have a villain named Sin Eater involved. And then you have the bromance between Spidey and old Hornhead, and then their tough conversation makes their friendship a lot more solidified and more personable as well. And I mean, like, personal, like, oh, what the hell is personal mean? Well, you actually gotta read it and find out, because it really does add a very important layer to really what affects their character chemistry, their storylines, their continuity, literally for years to come. This wasn't just something that was undone when the next writer stepped in. This is something that stuck for many years. Many years. I loved it when comic books really made their storylines feel like they mattered. And we got numero uno, number 1. This is not going to be shocking at all. This is as obvious as snow being white, the sky being blue. Yeah, I said that statement earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Yeah, I said what I said there too. Daredevil, Born Again, the comic storyline. So as I mentioned earlier, the show obviously takes from the title of this comic and season 3 on Netflix, loosely adapted elements from the story. And I'll even say elements of this storyline were even adapted as far as season 1 with the James Wesley.
Tell Mr. We don't say his name.
Yeah, remember that line? I remember that line too. So that all said, this storyline is essential comic book storytelling. So this is one of the best storylines ever. This is Frank Miller. This is David Mazzucchelli. I've talked about this on stream plenty of times, and now I get to finally talk about it here for a video. And I'm sure somewhere down the line it's going to be talked about in some way, shape, or form for another video, whatever that video may end up being. But this is probably the most popular, considered the most essential Daredevil storyline of all time. Definitely one of the best of all time ever. I mean, David Mazzucchelli's art is great. And the fact that you get to see Daredevil put through the ringer on a level like never seen before. Like, this is really where the Kingpin, let's just say he gets a leverage on Matt that he never thought he could have. Well, that's not even Matt. Let's say he gets a leverage on Daredevil that he never thought he had. And once he has that leverage, oh boy, does Daredevil's world turn upside down. You want to talk about a story where someone is brought down to their absolute lowest only to rise out of the ashes stronger than before? Holy shit. This one, tons of punches. And I mean that in the figurative and literal sense. So much has been said about the storyline. What I'm saying is nothing original. I'm just really reaffirming the accolades and the hype, because once in a while there are storylines that, let's just say, get lots of hype, like lots of it, and it takes a lot for them to live up to said hype. And this one still does it to this day. Now, if you want to be one of the guys who seeks us out in the single issues, that would be Daredevil number 227 through 233, which marked the end of the Frank Miller run on Daredevil as a whole. Now, if you want to be a true completist, you also got to get issue 226, because there's some, once again, light events in there that were used for season 1, used in this comic book as well, and also is like a soft build up into the actual Born Again storyline.
En la iglesia dicen que hay que perdonar.
Forgiveness is between them and God. It's my job to arrange the meeting.
And I sincerely hope that after you finish this video, you really take a strong consideration in checking out at least one of these storylines. Now, I've been given some flack about the digital, but really, if that's the only accessibility you have, then no, by all means, like, yeah, seek it out if that's all you have, but really, like, to go the extra mile if you can and seek these comics out in physical media, because physical media is still the best media. It's not even up for dispute on that. And any comic book fan from any walk of life, almost all of them are going to be in unison and that we agree that physical media is the way for this storytelling medium of visual arts. So seriously, check out one of these stories. And if you're even more extra badass, you'll check them all out. And if you've already read them all, well, hopefully you're like, okay, that Nick guy's got a solid list. And if you don't agree with my list, well, shit, man, that sucks to suck because my list is pretty fucking awesome. I'll say it's pretty fucking awesome. But thank you for watching this video. I'll see you all in the next video. You lay down your souls to the gods, rock and roll. Ah!